Lots of people say that graphics aren't everything with a video game, and while I do agree with that statement, they are a much larger part than those people would have you believe. And further to the other day's conversation about graphics, something that we often, when we talk about graphics, we're not often talking about things like art style or anything like that. We are talking about things like model quality and texture quality, and essentially how the game looks. Well, saying that, art style does kind of tie into that as well, but there's lots of facets of graphics that don't really get discussed as much as, oh, that texture looks a bit low res, oh, Solid Snake's head is a box, things like that. And I remember listening to a podcast about Metal Gear Solid, funnily enough, a few years ago, and one of the panellists, I think it was the Kane and Rinse podcasts, and one of the panellists mentioned the fact that the game has aged a lot better than it could have done, mainly because of the quality of the animations. And animation is something that I absolutely love. There's a lot of very old cartoons, for example, that are still very, very... They could have been made today, just because the animation is such quality. Things like Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes, that sort of thing. And video games are no exception. And we can easily get suckered into the idea of, frame rate. This discussion is going to be all over the place, but frame rate, high frame rate is very, very important. High frame rates for animations, not as important. When you're talking about 3D, yeah, it makes sense for your animations to be as smooth as your game is. But 2D, and to an extent stylized 3D, bit different. You can find much more nuanced discussions about this topic if you look up on YouTube, and they'll have visual aids as well. But the thing is, you can use less frames to convey more meaning. That's the idea. If you look at fighting games, for example, look at Street Fighter 2. I don't think anybody's going to say that the animation is bad in Street Fighter 2. Some Philistine will probably say the graphics are bad, but because it's 2D, but it is one of the better looking games out there. But Street Fighter 2, not very many frames of animation, and yet it looks fluid and it looks natural. Ryu, when he punches, it doesn't go all the way out. You can't see the intermediate punching animation. It goes from there to, I think it goes from there to about there, in one fell swoop. But it still looks natural, like I said. And if the intermediate frames were there, well, it probably wouldn't look very natural, because when you see someone punch in real life, well, you don't actually see the intermediate frames, do you? You just see my fist there, and then the blur of my fist being there. Well, you don't see it there because it's out of frame. So, animation, I feel, from the user perspective, often gets overlooked and doesn't get discussed as often as I think it should. When you're talking to people who make game graphics, then animation is a major thing, but that's by the by. Something else that I wanted to discuss is the fact that art style ages a lot better than graphics as such. You can play, I'm just trying to think of games that are a good illustration of this. The Wind Waker springs to mind. That game looks great, even now. GameCube game, I don't recall what year it was released exactly. I think it was 2004? Or 2003, one of the early 2000s is... That game looks incredible even now. And even Breath of the Wild, and it's a big old Zelda thing here, Breath of the Wild, that game is not as much of a graphics powerhouse as it could have been by the time it was released, 2017. And if you look at other games from 2017, well, they all look very realistic and very realistic and very lifelike, and the lighting is great and all this, and it just looks like a picture and it's boring. Breath of the Wild Well, it doesn't look bad, and it's never going to look bad, because it's got that very distinct, stylized art style, you see? Nobody's going to be going up to the textures and saying, oh, it's a bit low res, because they're not even going to notice, probably. I don't even notice, and I notice these things, and I can't think of any textures in Breath of the Wild that look bad. And the same would probably go for the Wind Waker. I haven't scrutinised the Wind Waker very much, but and I'll probably see, one or two things look a bit blurry, but hey, it looks amazing still. And there's lots of games just like that. In fact, I even saw a clip of The Simpsons wrestling, a game which is not viewed very, very highly, and even that looks pretty good, because it's cel-shaded on the PS1. Impressive, and it looks surprisingly good for the time. So, this is all stuff you probably know. But there's something that I have come across that perhaps doesn't get... Oh, that's what I was going to say. If you take an old game and put new graphics in it, 9 times out of 10 it looks dreadful. And what I mean is, things like... You take the Doom high-res texture pack, for example, and Doom is very low detail, as these things go. You've got lots of flat walls, you've got lots of very polygonal rooms, and it fits with the low-res textures that you see in that game, but if you put in the high-res texture pack and suddenly all these textures are very crisp and clean, well, it looks just all kinds of wrong. Same thing with Minecraft high-res texture packs, in my opinion, but lots of people like them. I don't understand it. So, to me, high-res texture packs in old games don't really work, and the same goes for like high-res models, but the environments are still the same. Just looks wrong. They look out of place. But there is something that you can do that fits perfectly with old games, and I'm going to use Doom as an example again. There is a pack of sound effects where someone's taken all the original sound effects from the various sound libraries that Doom used in the original quality and transplanted them into a Doom mod. Oh, it sounds so good, and it improves the game just because it sounds better, and it still fits with the Doom thing. It elevates it. And on a similar note, music, if you improve the music, that can have the same sort of effect. Anyway, yes, that's been a bit of a rambling discussion, but there's lots of things about old games, and it is not just about graphics, but graphics are a very important part of games, and I'll probably have a lot more to say about that topic. But I'm going to leave that there, otherwise I'll end up running over, and I still need to edit this, and it's like nearly 11 o'clock, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Keep doing this one, don't I? It's getting a bit old in the tooth. Let's see if we can come up with some new waves next week.